My name is Emily Carter. I'm 22 years old, and 3 weeks ago I stood behind a curtain on a graduation stage, looking out at 3,000 folding chairs filled with families who had no idea what was about to happen. Somewhere in the fourth row, dead center, sat my parents. They were there to watch my twin sister graduate. They did not know I went to that university. They did not know I had transferred there 2 semesters earlier, and they certainly did not know that in about 4 minutes, an usher was going to call my name, and I was going to walk out from behind that curtain wearing a gold sash they never thought I'd earn. But this story doesn't start on that stage. It starts 4 years earlier, in my parents' living room, on an ordinary Tuesday evening in April, when my father looked me directly in the eyes and told me I wasn't worth investing in. Before I get into it, if stories like this one hit close to home for you, if you've ever felt like the extra child in your own family, do me a favor and hit that like button, and subscribe if you haven't already. It genuinely helps this story reach the people who need to hear it. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight, and what time is it where you are? I love reading through those. Okay, let's go back to where it all began. Part 1. The living room. The acceptance letters came on the same afternoon, which in hindsight feels almost cruel, like the universe wanted to make the comparison as sharp as possible. My sister, Sophia, had been accepted into Ashford University, a private school with a reputation for producing senators and CEOs, at a price tag just north of $65,000 a year. I had been accepted into Rutgers-adjacent Camden State, a respectable public university, $24,000 a year. Not cheap, but not out of reach for a two-income household that owned its home outright and had, by my calculations, somewhere around $400,000 sitting in retirement and brokerage accounts. That evening, my father called what he liked to call a family meeting, which really just meant everyone had to sit in the living room while he talked and we listened. He settled into his leather recliner the way he always did, like a man about to deliver a quarterly earnings report. My mother sat on the couch with her hands folded in her lap, already smiling in anticipation of something. Sophia stood by the window, practically vibrating with excitement, holding her acceptance letter against her chest like a trophy. I sat across from my father in the armchair that always seemed to swallow me whole, my own letter still folded in my hands. "We need to talk about tuition," my father said, and I remember thinking, stupidly, hopefully, that this was going to be a conversation. It was not a conversation. It was an announcement. "Sophia," he continued, "we're going to cover Ashford in full. Tuition, housing, meal plan, a car for getting around campus, everything." Sophia let out a sound somewhere between a scream and a sob, and my mother was up off the couch hugging her within seconds. I sat there and waited, because surely he was about to turn to me next. He did turn to me next. "Emily," he said, and something in his voice had already changed, gone flatter, more clinical. "Your mother and I have talked about it, and we've decided we're not going to be able to fund your education." I remember the exact physical sensation of those words, landing. It wasn't like a punch, it was more like the floor tilting very slightly beneath me, just enough that I had to consciously balance myself in the chair. "I'm sorry, what?" "Sophia has leadership potential," he said, as if reading from a memo he'd prepared in advance. "She's outgoing. She'll build the kind of network that pays off long term. It's a sound investment." He paused there, and I want you to sit with this next part the way I had to sit with it, because I think it's the sentence that rearranged something permanent in my chest. "You're smart, Emily, I'll give you that, but you're not special. There's no real return on investment with you." I looked at my mother, hoping, honestly, praying that she'd correct it, soften it, say something, anything. She wouldn't even meet my eyes. She was already looking down at her phone, probably texting her Aunt Carol about Sophia's acceptance. I looked at Sophia. She had her phone out too. thumbs flying, already telling her friends the good news, completely oblivious to the sentence that had just been used to erase me from the family's future. "You're resourceful," he added, like that was supposed to be a compliment. I want to be honest with you, I didn't cry that night. I had cried plenty over the years, over the missed birthdays, the hand-me-down everything, the way I always seemed to get cropped out of the edges of family photos like an afterthought someone forgot to remove. But that night, sitting in my room with the door closed, I just sat there in a strange, cold quiet and thought, to them, I'm not a daughter. I'm a bad investment. What my father did not know, what nobody in that house could have possibly known that night, was that this single decision, this one cruel sentence, was about to set off a chain of events that would end with him sitting frozen in a graduation audience 4 years later, watching me walk to a podium he never expected to see me anywhere near. Part 2. The pattern nobody would name. Here's the thing about that night in the living room. It wasn't actually the beginning. It was just the loudest, most explicit version of something that had been happening quietly for years. When Sophia and I turned 16, she got a brand new silver Honda Civic with an actual red bow tied around the antenna, like something out of a commercial. I got her old laptop, the one with the spider-webbed crack across the corner of the screen, and a battery that held maybe 40 minutes of charge if you were lucky and didn't open too many tabs. "We can't really afford 2 cars right now," my mother told me at the time, in that gentle, apologetic voice she used whenever she wanted me to accept less without complaining about it. Funny, though, how they could afford Sophia's ski trips, her designer prom dress that cost more than my entire back-to-school wardrobe, her summer abroad program in Barcelona. Family vacations were their own particular flavor of humiliation. Sophia always got her own hotel room, or, at minimum, her own bed. I slept on pull-out couches in hallways. Once, I'm not exaggerating, in what the resort staff generously called a cozy reading nook, which was, in reality, a closet with a cot in it. In every single family photo those years, Sophia stood dead center, glowing, camera-ready. I was almost always at the edge of the frame, half cut off like someone had forgotten I existed until the last second and shoved me in just before the shutter clicked. When I was 17, desperate enough to actually ask my mother directly about it, she just sighed like I was being dramatic. "Sweetheart, you're imagining things. We love you both the same." But actions, as it turns out, do not lie nearly as well as words do. A few months before that infamous living room announcement, I found my mother's phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. A text thread with my Aunt Carol was open on the screen. I shouldn't have read it. I did anyway. "Poor Emily," my mother had written. "But Richard is right. She just doesn't stand out the way Sophia does. We have to be practical about where we put our resources." I set the phone back down exactly where I found it and walked away without saying a word. That night, lying awake, I made a decision that I told absolutely no one about, not out of some grand plan for revenge, but because I needed, more than anything, to prove something to myself. I opened my cracked, dying laptop and typed into the search bar, "Full scholarships for independent students." The page loaded painfully slowly on that ancient battery, but what came up on that screen would end up changing the entire trajectory of my life. I did the real math the same week, sitting cross-legged on my bedroom floor at 2 in the morning with a spiral notebook and a calculator, because if I was going to do this, whatever this was going to be, I needed to know exactly what I was up against. Camden State, $24,000 a year. Over 4 years, that's roughly $96,000. Parental contribution, 0. My total savings from 3 summers of part-time work, $2,100.
The gap between those numbers was staggering enough to make my stomach drop every time I looked at it. If I couldn't close it, I had exactly 3 options in front of me. Option 1, don't go at all. Option 2, take on 6 figures of student debt that would follow me around like a shadow for the next 20 years. Option 3, go part-time, stretch a 4-year degree into 7 or 8 years while working full-time, and watch everyone my age finish long before me. Every single one of those paths led to the same humiliating conclusion, becoming exactly what my father said I already was: the disappointment, the bad investment, the twin who didn't quite make it. I could practically hear the future Thanksgiving conversations already forming in my head. Sophia is doing so well at Ashford, and Emily? Oh, she's still figuring things out. But here's what I want you to understand, because I think it matters more than the anger did. This was never really about proving my parents wrong, it was about proving myself right. So I kept scrolling through scholarship databases until my eyes physically burned. Most of what I found required recommendation letters I didn't have relationships to secure, essays, extensive proof of financial hardship documentation. Some were outright scams designed to harvest personal information. Others had deadlines that had already quietly passed weeks earlier. And then I found something. Camden State ran a merit-based program for first-generation and financially independent students, full tuition coverage plus a modest living stipend. The catch? Only 5 students were selected per year out of hundreds of applicants. I saved the link and kept scrolling, and that's when I saw a name for the first time that I would end up thinking about every single day for the next 4 years. The Harrington Scholars Program. Full ride. $10,000 annually for living expenses, awarded to only 20 students nationwide out of thousands of applicants at partner universities across the country. I actually laughed out loud alone in my room at 2 in the morning. 20 students in the entire country? What real chance did I have? But I bookmarked it anyway, because I had 2 choices in front of me that night: accept the life my parents had designed for me, or design one of my own. I chose the second one, and to make that choice mean anything, I needed a plan, and I needed it immediately. If any of this is resonating with you so far, if you've ever had to build a plan for your own future because nobody was going to build it for you, drop a comment letting me know. I read every single one. And if you want to see how far this actually goes, make sure you're subscribed, because it only gets more intense from here. I filled an entire notebook that summer. Every page was another calculation. Every margin was crowded with schedules, budgets, contingency plans. Job number 1, barista at a campus coffee shop, 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. shifts. Estimated monthly income around $800. Job number 2, weekend cleaning crew for the residence halls, roughly $400 a month. Job number 3, contingent on approval, teaching assistant position in the economics department, potentially another $300 a month if I could land it. Total, if everything lined up, about $1,500 a month, roughly $18,000 a year. Still around $7,000 short of full tuition every single year. That remaining gap would have to come from merit scholarships, the kind you fight for and earn, not the kind that gets handed to you because of who your parents are. I found the cheapest housing option within walking distance of campus, a small shared room in a house with 4 other students, $300 a month, utilities included, no air conditioning, barely any personal space at all. It would have to do. My schedule crystallized into something that, looking back now, I honestly don't know how I survived. 5 a.m., wake up and get to the coffee shop. 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., classes. 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., studying or covering a cleaning shift or TA duties if I landed the position. 11 p.m. to somewhere between 3 and 4 a.m., sleep. 4 to 5 hours a night for 4 straight years. The week before I left for college, Sophia posted an entire album from her farewell trip to Cancun with friends. Sunset beach shots, everyone laughing over frozen drinks by an infinity pool. I spent that same week packing a threadbare thrift store comforter into a secondhand suitcase with a broken zipper I'd fixed with a safety pin. Our lives were already splitting apart into 2 completely different realities, and we hadn't even started college yet. But here's what kept me moving forward every single night. Before I fell asleep, exhausted, I would whisper the same sentence to myself like a small private prayer. This is the price of my own freedom. Freedom from their expectations, freedom from their judgment, freedom from ever needing their approval again. I had absolutely no idea back then how right that whispered promise would turn out to be, or that somewhere on that campus there was a professor who was going to see something in me that my own parents never once looked hard enough to find. My first Thanksgiving away from home, I sat alone in that tiny rented room, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the muffled sounds of a family gathering I wasn't part of. Laughter in the background, the clink of dishes, the warm chaos of a holiday happening 500 miles without me. "Hello, Emily?" My mother's voice came through, distant and distracted. "Happy Thanksgiving, honey." "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom. Is Dad around? Can I talk to him?" A pause. Then, muffled in the background, unmistakably my father's voice. "Tell her I'm busy." Those 5 words landed like small stones dropped straight into my chest. My mother came back on the line, her voice artificially bright now. "Your father's just in the middle of something, sweetheart. Sophia's telling the funniest story." "It's fine, Mom. Are you eating okay? Do you need anything?" I looked around my room as I said it, at the cup of instant ramen sitting on my desk, at the second-hand blanket folded at the foot of my mattress, and the economics textbook I'd borrowed from the library because I genuinely could not afford to buy my own copy. "No, Mom, I don't need anything." "Okay, well, we love you." "Love you too." I hung up and almost immediately opened social media, which is possibly the worst decision a person can make while feeling that particular kind of lonely. The very first post in my feed was one Sophia had just uploaded, my parents and my sister seated around the dining table, candles lit, the turkey golden and gleaming under warm lighting. The caption read, "Thankful for my amazing family." My amazing family. I zoomed in on that photo without even meaning to. 3 place settings, 3 chairs, not 4. They hadn't even bothered to set an extra place, just in case. There was no version of that dinner in which I existed, not even hypothetically. I sat there staring at that photo for a long time. Something shifted inside me that night, not dramatically, not with any kind of explosion, just quietly. The ache I'd been carrying for years, this constant hunger for their approval and attention, didn't disappear exactly. It hollowed out instead, and in the space where that pain used to live, there was suddenly just a strange, quiet emptiness. Strangely enough, that emptiness gave me something the pain never gave: clarity. Second semester of freshman year, I was enrolled in introductory microeconomics, taught by a woman named Dr. Helena Reyes, who was something of a legend on campus. 30 years of teaching, published across every major journal in the field, and a reputation terrifying enough that students genuinely whispered she hadn't handed out an A in 5 years. I sat in the 3rd row, took meticulous, borderline obsessive notes, and turned in my first major essay expecting, honestly, a B- at best. It came back with 2 letters written at the top in sharp red ink: A+. Beneath the grade, a short note: "See me after class." My stomach dropped immediately. I assumed I'd somehow done something wrong. After the lecture, I approached her desk while she was packing up her bag, silver hair pulled back into a severe bun, reading glasses perched low on her nose. "Emily Carter." "Yes, ma'am?" "Sit down." I sat. She looked at me over the top of her glasses. "This essay is one of the best pieces of undergraduate writing I've seen in 20 years of teaching. Where did you study before this?" "Nowhere special. Public high school. Nothing advanced." "And your family? Academics?" I hesitated for a moment, and then the words just came out before I could stop them. "My family doesn't really support my education, financially or otherwise." She set her pen down slowly. "Tell me more." The gap between those numbers was staggering enough to make my stomach drop every time I looked at it. If I couldn't close it, I had exactly 3 options in front of me. Option 1, don't go at all. Option 2, take on 6 figures of student debt that would follow me around like a shadow for the next 20 years. Option 3, go part-time, stretch a 4-year degree into 7 or 8 years while working full-time, and watch everyone my age finish long before me. Every single one of those paths led to the same humiliating conclusion, becoming exactly what my father said I already was: the disappointment, the bad investment, the twin who didn't quite make it. I could practically hear the future Thanksgiving conversations already forming in my head. Sophia is doing so well at Ashford, and Emily? Oh, she's still figuring things out. But here's what I want you to understand, because I think it matters more than the anger did. This was never really about proving my parents wrong, it was about proving myself right. So I kept scrolling through scholarship databases until my eyes physically burned. Most of what I found required recommendation letters I didn't have relationships to secure, essays, extensive proof of financial hardship documentation. Some were outright scams designed to harvest personal information. Others had deadlines that had already quietly passed weeks earlier. And then I found something. Camden State ran a merit-based program for first-generation and financially independent students, full tuition coverage plus a modest living stipend. The catch? Only 5 students were selected per year out of hundreds of applicants. I saved the link and kept scrolling, and that's when I saw a name for the first time that I would end up thinking about every single day for the next 4 years. The Harrington Scholars Program. Full ride. $10,000 annually for living expenses, awarded to only 20 students nationwide out of thousands of applicants at partner universities across the country. I actually laughed out loud alone in my room at 2 in the morning. 20 students in the entire country? What real chance did I have? But I bookmarked it anyway, because I had 2 choices in front of me that night: accept the life my parents had designed for me, or design one of my own. I chose the second one, and to make that choice mean anything, I needed a plan, and I needed it immediately. If any of this is resonating with you so far, if you've ever had to build a plan for your own future because nobody was going to build it for you, drop a comment letting me know. I read every single one. And if you want to see how far this actually goes, make sure you're subscribed, because it only gets more intense from here. I filled an entire notebook that summer. Every page was another calculation. Every margin was crowded with schedules, budgets, contingency plans. Job number 1, barista at a campus coffee shop, 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. shifts. Estimated monthly income around $800. Job number 2, weekend cleaning crew for the residence halls, roughly $400 a month. Job number 3, contingent on approval, teaching assistant position in the economics department, potentially another $300 a month if I could land it. Total, if everything lined up, about $1,500 a month, roughly $18,000 a year. Still around $7,000 short of full tuition every single year. That remaining gap would have to come from merit scholarships, the kind you fight for and earn, not the kind that gets handed to you because of who your parents are. I found the cheapest housing option within walking distance of campus, a small shared room in a house with 4 other students, $300 a month, utilities included, no air conditioning, barely any personal space at all. It would have to do. My schedule crystallized into something that, looking back now, I honestly don't know how I survived. 5 a.m., wake up and get to the coffee shop. 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., classes. 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., studying or covering a cleaning shift or TA duties if I landed the position. 11 p.m. to somewhere between 3 and 4 a.m., sleep. 4 to 5 hours a night for 4 straight years. The week before I left for college, Sophia posted an entire album from her farewell trip to Cancun with friends. Sunset beach shots, everyone laughing over frozen drinks by an infinity pool. I spent that same week packing a threadbare thrift store comforter into a secondhand suitcase with a broken zipper I'd fixed with a safety pin. Our lives were already splitting apart into 2 completely different realities, and we hadn't even started college yet. But here's what kept me moving forward every single night. Before I fell asleep, exhausted, I would whisper the same sentence to myself like a small private prayer. This is the price of my own freedom. Freedom from their expectations, freedom from their judgment, freedom from ever needing their approval again. I had absolutely no idea back then how right that whispered promise would turn out to be, or that somewhere on that campus there was a professor who was going to see something in me that my own parents never once looked hard enough to find. My first Thanksgiving away from home, I sat alone in that tiny rented room, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the muffled sounds of a family gathering I wasn't part of. Laughter in the background, the clink of dishes, the warm chaos of a holiday happening 500 miles without me. "Hello, Emily?" My mother's voice came through, distant and distracted. "Happy Thanksgiving, honey." "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom. Is Dad around? Can I talk to him?" A pause. Then, muffled in the background, unmistakably my father's voice. "Tell her I'm busy." Those 5 words landed like small stones dropped straight into my chest. My mother came back on the line, her voice artificially bright now. "Your father's just in the middle of something, sweetheart. Sophia's telling the funniest story." "It's fine, Mom. Are you eating okay? Do you need anything?" I looked around my room as I said it, at the cup of instant ramen sitting on my desk, at the second-hand blanket folded at the foot of my mattress, and the economics textbook I'd borrowed from the library because I genuinely could not afford to buy my own copy. "No, Mom, I don't need anything." "Okay, well, we love you." "Love you too." I hung up and almost immediately opened social media, which is possibly the worst decision a person can make while feeling that particular kind of lonely. The very first post in my feed was one Sophia had just uploaded, my parents and my sister seated around the dining table, candles lit, the turkey golden and gleaming under warm lighting. The caption read, "Thankful for my amazing family." My amazing family. I zoomed in on that photo without even meaning to. 3 place settings, 3 chairs, not 4. They hadn't even bothered to set an extra place, just in case. There was no version of that dinner in which I existed, not even hypothetically. I sat there staring at that photo for a long time. Something shifted inside me that night, not dramatically, not with any kind of explosion, just quietly. The ache I'd been carrying for years, this constant hunger for their approval and attention, didn't disappear exactly. It hollowed out instead, and in the space where that pain used to live, there was suddenly just a strange, quiet emptiness. Strangely enough, that emptiness gave me something the pain never gave: clarity. Second semester of freshman year, I was enrolled in introductory microeconomics, taught by a woman named Dr. Helena Reyes, who was something of a legend on campus. 30 years of teaching, published across every major journal in the field, and a reputation terrifying enough that students genuinely whispered she hadn't handed out an A in 5 years. I sat in the 3rd row, took meticulous, borderline obsessive notes, and turned in my first major essay expecting, honestly, a B- at best. It came back with 2 letters written at the top in sharp red ink: A+. Beneath the grade, a short note: "See me after class." My stomach dropped immediately. I assumed I'd somehow done something wrong. After the lecture, I approached her desk while she was packing up her bag, silver hair pulled back into a severe bun, reading glasses perched low on her nose. "Emily Carter." "Yes, ma'am?" "Sit down." I sat. She looked at me over the top of her glasses. "This essay is one of the best pieces of undergraduate writing I've seen in 20 years of teaching. Where did you study before this?" "Nowhere special. Public high school. Nothing advanced." "And your family? Academics?" I hesitated for a moment, and then the words just came out before I could stop them. "My family doesn't really support my education, financially or otherwise." She set her pen down slowly. "Tell me more." So I did. For the very first time, I told another human being the entire story. The favoritism, the rejection in that living room, the 3 jobs, the 4 hours of sleep a night, all of it laid out in full for the first time out loud. When I finished, she sat quietly for a long moment. Then she said something that permanently altered the direction of my life. "Have you heard of the Harrington Scholarship Program?" "I've seen it," I said slowly, "but it's basically impossible. 20 students nationwide. Full ride, living stipend, and here's the part most people don't know. The recipients at partner schools deliver the commencement address at graduation." She leaned forward slightly. "Emily, you have real potential, extraordinary potential, honestly. But potential means absolutely nothing if no one ever sees it. Let me help you be seen." The next 2 years dissolved into a relentless, grinding rhythm. Wake at 4 a.m., coffee shop shift by 5, classes by 9, library until midnight most nights, sleep, repeat. I missed nearly every party, every football game, every late-night pizza run that other students treated as the defining texture of college life. While my classmates were out building memories, I was building a GPA, a perfect 4.0, 6 consecutive semesters. There were moments I genuinely thought I might break. Once I fainted mid-shift at the coffee shop. Exhaustion and mild dehydration, the on-call nurse told me. I was back behind the counter the very next morning because I couldn't afford to lose the shift. Another time, I sat in a car a friend had lent me for a job interview and cried for a solid 20 minutes straight, not because of any one specific thing that had just happened, but because everything, years of everything, seemed to catch up with me all at once in that parking lot. But I kept going. Junior year, Dr. Reyes called me into her office. "I'm nominating you for the Harrington." I just stared at her. "You're serious?" 10 essays, 3 rounds of interviews. It will be the hardest thing you've ever done. She paused. "But you've already survived harder." The application ended up consuming 3 full months of my life. Essays on resilience, on leadership, on personal vision. Phone interviews with entire panels of professors from partner universities. Background checks, reference letters. Somewhere in the middle of that grind, Sophia texted me, the first time in months. "Mom says you don't come home for Christmas anymore. That's kind of sad, TBH." I read the message twice, then turned my phone face down on the desk and went back to my essay. The truth was, I couldn't afford a plane ticket home, but even if I could have, I genuinely wasn't sure I wanted to go. That Christmas, I sat alone in my rented room with a cup of instant noodles and a tiny paper Christmas tree a friend had made me out of construction paper. No family, no gifts, no simmering tension under the surface of every conversation. It was, somehow, the most peaceful holiday I'd had in years. If you've ever chosen peace over a place at a table that never really wanted you there, I want you to know that was not a small decision, and I see you for making it. All right, like this video if that hit somewhere, and let's keep going, because the next part is the part that changes everything. The email arrived at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in September, senior year. Subject line, Harrington Foundation Final Round Notification. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely make my thumb work the screen. "Dear Miss Carter, congratulations. Out of 200 applicants, you have been selected as one of 50 finalists for the Harrington Scholarship. The final round will consist of an in-person interview at our headquarters in New York City. 50 finalists, 20 winners. A 40% chance, in theory, if everything were equal. But things were never actually equal, not for someone in my position. The interview was scheduled for a Friday, roughly 500 miles away. I checked my bank account, $847. A last-minute flight would run at least $400, a hotel would eat up most of the rest, and rent was due in 2 weeks. I was genuinely about to close the laptop and let the opportunity go when my roommate Maya knocked on my door. "You look like you saw a ghost." I showed her the email. She screamed. I mean, actually screamed. "You're going," she said. "End of discussion." "Maya, I can't afford—" "Bus ticket is $53. Leaves Thursday night, gets in Friday morning. I'll lend you the money." "I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking, I'm telling you." She grabbed my shoulders. "This is your shot. You don't get another one."
So I took the overnight bus. 8 hours, arriving in Manhattan at 5 in the morning with a stiff neck and a borrowed blazer I'd picked up from a thrift store the week before. The interview waiting room was full of polished, confident candidates in designer clothing, parents hovering nearby with the kind of easy confidence money buys. I looked down at my second-hand outfit, my scuffed flats, and thought, I don't belong in this room. Then I remembered something Dr. Reyes had told me before I left. You don't need to belong there. You need to show them you deserve to be there. 2 weeks after that interview, I was walking to my morning shift when my phone buzzed. Subject line, Harrington Scholarship, Decision. I stopped dead in the middle of the sidewalk. A cyclist swerved around me, shouting something I didn't even register. I opened the email. Dear Miss Carter, congratulations. You have been selected as a Harrington Scholar for the graduating class. I read it 3 times, then a 4th. Then I sat straight down on the curb and cried. Not quiet, composed tears, but the ugly, heaving, full-body kind that made strangers actually stop and stare. 3 years of exhaustion and loneliness and grinding, relentless determination poured out of me right there on that sidewalk. I was a Harrington Scholar, full tuition, $10,000 a year for living expenses, and the right to transfer to any partner university in their network. That night, Dr. Reyes called me personally. Emily, I just got the notification. I am so, so proud of you. Thank you for everything. There's something else, she said. The Harrington program allows you to transfer to a partner school for your final year. Ashford University is on that list. Ashford? Sophia's school. If you transfer, she continued, you'd graduate with their top honors designation, and the Harrington Scholar delivers the commencement address. My breath caught somewhere in my chest. I'd be valedictorial. I'd speak at graduation in front of everyone. I thought about my parents sitting in that audience for Sophia's big gay, completely unaware I would be anywhere near that campus. I'm not doing this for revenge, I said quietly, almost as much to myself as to her. I know. I'm doing it because Ashford has the stronger program for where I want my career to go. I know that too, she paused. But if they happen to see you shine along the way, that's just a bonus. I made my decision that night, and I told absolutely no one in my family. 3 weeks into my final semester at Ashford, it happened. I was tucked into a corner carrel on the 3rd floor of the library, buried in a constitutional law textbook, when I heard a voice that made my stomach drop straight through the floor. Oh my God, Emily? I looked up. Sophia stood about 3 feet away, an iced latte in her hand, mouth hanging open in complete disbelief. How are you? She couldn't even form a full sentence. I closed my book calmly. Hi, Sophia. You go here? Since when? Mom and Dad didn't say anything. Mom and Dad don't know. She blinked hard. What do you mean they don't know? Exactly what I said. They don't know I'm here. She set her coffee down slowly, still staring at me like I'd materialized out of thin air. But how? They're not paying for... how did you... I paid for Ashford myself. I transferred on scholarship. The word hung in the air between us for a long beat. Her expression shifted through confusion, disbelief, and then something else, something that looked almost like shame. Did you tell anyone? I looked at her, my twin sister, the one who had received everything I'd been denied, the one who had never once, not a single time in 4 years, asked how I was actually surviving. Did you ever ask? She opened her mouth, closed it again, said nothing. I gathered my books. I need to get to class. Emily, wait! She grabbed my arm. Do you hate us, the family? I looked at her hand on my sleeve, then back at her face. No, I said quietly. You can't hate people you've stopped caring about. I pulled my arm free and walked away. That night, my phone lit up with a wave of missed calls. Mom, Dad, Sophia again. I silenced every single one of them. Whatever was about to unfold, it was going to happen on my terms, not theirs. Sophia called our parents almost the instant I walked away from her in that library. I know this because she told me herself much later, after everything had already played out. "She's here," Sophia had said, barely through the door of her apartment. "Emily's at Ashford. She's been here since September." According to Sophia, the silence on the other end of the line lasted a full 10 seconds before my father finally spoke. "That's impossible. She doesn't have the money." She said scholarship. "What scholarship? She's not scholarship material." "Dad, I saw her in the library. I'll handle this." My father called me the next morning, the first time he'd dialed my number directly in almost 3 years. "Emily, we need to talk." "About what?" "Sophia says you're at Ashford, that you transferred without telling us." "I didn't think you'd care." A pause. "Of course I care. You're my daughter." "Am I?" The words came out completely flat. Not bitter exactly, just factual. "You told me I wasn't worth the investment. Remember that?" Silence. "Emily, that was 4 years ago, in the living room. You said I wasn't special, that there was no return on investment with me." "I don't remember saying that." "I do." More silence stretched out between us. Then he said, "We should discuss this in person, at graduation. We're coming for Sophia's ceremony, and I know you know that. I'll see you there, Emily." I hung up. He never called back after that. That night, alone in my small apartment, one I had paid for entirely myself, with money I had earned, I sat and turned that conversation over in my mind. He didn't remember saying it, or he had simply chosen not to remember. Either way, the conclusion was the same. He had never actually seen me. Not really. But in 3 months, he would. And when that moment finally came, it wasn't going to be because I forced him to look. It was going to be because he simply would not be able to look. The weeks leading up to graduation settled into a strange, tense kind of quiet. I knew they were coming. My mother, my father, my sister, the whole carefully curated family unit descending on campus to celebrate Sophia's big achievement. They had booked a hotel, planned a celebratory dinner, ordered flowers for her. What they still did not know was the full picture. Sophia had told them I was at Ashford, but she had no idea about the Harrington Scholarship, no idea about the valedictorian honor, no idea I'd been asked to deliver the commencement address. Dr. Reyes called to check in. She had made the trip herself to watch. "Do you want me to give your family a heads up about the speech?" "No," I told her. "I want them to hear it exactly when everyone else does." She was quiet for a moment. "This isn't about making them feel small, is it?" "No," I said, and I meant it completely. "It's about telling my truth. If they happen to be sitting in that audience when I do, that's their business, not mine." My roommate Maya drove up for the ceremony and helped me pick out a dress, the first brand new piece of clothing I'd bought in nearly 2 years that hadn't come from a thrift store. Simple navy blue, elegant, understated. "You look like a CEO." I feel like I'm going to throw up. Honestly, probably the same thing. The night before graduation, I couldn't sleep. Not from nerves exactly, or not only from nerves. I kept wondering what I would actually feel when I saw them. Would the old ache come flooding back the moment I laid eyes on them? Would some part of me want them to hurt the way I had hurt for years? I stared at the ceiling until 3 in the morning, searching for an honest answer. What I found surprised me. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want them to suffer. I just wanted to be free. And tomorrow, one way or another, I was. Okay, I want to pause here for just a second, because the next part is the part everyone always asks me about. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, if you know exactly what it feels like to work twice as hard for half the recognition, type same in the comments right now. I genuinely want to see how many of us have lived through some version of this. And if this story has you invested, this is the moment to hit that like button, because graduation day is about to start. Graduation morning arrived bright and clear, the kind of perfect blue sky that felt almost mockingly ironic, given everything about to unfold beneath it. Ashford Stadium seated 3,000 people, and by 9 a.m. it was nearly full. Families streaming through the gates, flowers and balloons everywhere, the low hum of 1,000 overlapping conversations filling the air. I arrived early, slipping through the faculty entrance. My regalia looked different from every other graduate's. Standard black gown, yes, but draped across my shoulders was the gold sash marking the valedictorian, and pinned to my chest was the Harrington Scholar Medallion, its bronze surface catching the morning light every time I moved. I took my seat in the reserved section near the front of the stage. Honor students, speakers, faculty. About 20 feet away, in the general graduate section, Sophia was taking selfies with her friends, completely unaware I was anywhere nearby. And in the audience, dead center, front row, the best seats in the entire stadium, sat my parents. My father wore his navy suit, the one reserved for important occasions. My mother had on a cream-colored dress, a massive bouquet of roses resting in her lap. Between them sat an empty chair, presumably meant for coats and bags. Not for me, never for me. My father was fiddling with his camera, adjusting the settings, preparing to capture what he assumed would be Sophia's shining moment. My mother was smiling, waving at someone across the aisle. They looked genuinely happy, genuinely proud. They had absolutely no idea what was coming. The university president stepped up to the podium, and the crowd slowly quieted. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ashford University's commencement ceremony for this graduating class. Applause rolled through the stadium. I sat perfectly still, hands folded in my lap. In a few minutes, they were going to call my name, and everything was about to change. The ceremony moved through its usual waves of the welcome address, acknowledgments, honorary degrees, all the pageantry that stretches time like taffy when you're waiting for one specific moment. Then the university president returned to the podium. And now it is my great honor to introduce this year's valedictorian and Harrington Scholar. My heart rate spiked instantly. A student who has demonstrated extraordinary resilience, academic excellence, and strength of character. In the audience, I watched my mother lean over and whisper something to my father. He nodded, already adjusting his camera lens, aiming it squarely at Sophia. Please join me in welcoming Emily Parter. For one long, suspended second, absolutely nothing happened. Then I stood. 3,000 pairs of eyes turned toward me at once. I walked toward the podium, my heels clicking sharply across the stage floor, the gold sash swaying with every move, the medallion catching the light against my chest. And in the front row, I watched my parents' faces transform in real time. My father's hand froze completely on his camera. My mother's bouquet of roses slid sideways in her lap. Forgotten. Confusion crossed their faces first. Who is that? Then recognition. Wait, is that? Then outright shock. It can't be. Then nothing at all but pale, stricken silence. Sophia's head snapped toward the stage. Her jaw actually dropped. I watched her mouth form my name silently. Emily. I reached the podium and adjusted the microphone. 3,000 people applauded. My parents did not. They just sat there, completely frozen, as if someone had pressed pause on their entire world. For the first time in my entire life, they were looking at me, really looking, not at Sophia, not through me like I was invisible, at me. I let the applause settle. Then I leaned into the microphone. Good morning, everyone. My voice came out steady, calm. 4 years ago, I was told I wasn't worth the investment. In the front row, my mother's hand flew up to cover her mouth. My father's camera hung completely useless at his side. I was told I didn't have what it takes. My voice carried clean across the stadium, amplified and steady as a heartbeat. 3,000 people sat in near-perfect silence. So, I learned to expect more. I talked about the 3 jobs, the 4 hours of sleep a night, the instant ramen dinners and the secondhand textbooks. I talked about what it actually means to build something entirely from nothing, not to prove anyone else wrong, but because you finally need to prove yourself right. I never named names. I never pointed fingers. I didn't need to. The greatest gift I ever received, I said, wasn't financial support, and it wasn't encouragement. It was the chance to discover exactly who I am, without needing anyone's validation to get there. In the front row, my mother was crying now. Not the joyful, proud tears you usually see at a graduation, but something raw, something that looked much more like grief. My father sat completely motionless, staring up at the podium like he was looking at a total stranger. Maybe, in some way, he was. To anyone who has ever been told you're not enough, I paused, letting the words settle across the stadium. You are. You always have been. I looked out across that sea of faces, at other graduates who had clearly struggled through their own versions of hard, at parents who had genuinely sacrificed for their kids, at friends who had believed in each other, and yes, at my own family, sitting in the front row like statues carved from stone. I am not standing here today because someone believed in me. I am standing here because I learned how to believe in myself. The applause that followed was thunderous. People rose to their feet in a full standing ovation. 3,000 strangers cheering for a young woman most of them had never met until that exact moment. I stepped back from the podium and descended the stage, and at the bottom, waiting, stood the founder of the Harrington Foundation himself. But he wasn't the only one waiting for me. The reception buzzed with champagne, congratulations, and the general noise of 2,000 simultaneous conversations. I was shaking hands with the dean when I saw them approaching, my parents moving through the crowd like they were wading through deep water. My father reached me first. "Emily," his voice came out hoarse, "why didn't you tell us?" I accepted a glass of sparkling water from a passing server and took a slow sip before answering. "Did you ever ask?" He opened his mouth, closed it again. My mother arrived beside him, mascara streaked down her cheeks. "Baby, I'm so sorry, we didn't know." "No," I said, my voice even. "You knew, you chose not to see." "That's not fair," my father started. "Fair?" The word came out calm, not sharp at all. "You paid $260,000 for Sophia's education and told me to figure it out myself. That's what happened." My mother reached for me. I stepped back before her hand could land. "Emily, please." "I'm not angry," I said, and I genuinely meant it. The anger had burned itself out somewhere along the way, replaced by something cleaner, quieter. My father's jaw tightened. "I made a mistake. I said things I shouldn't have." "You said what you believed." I met his eyes directly. "You were right about one thing, though. I wasn't worth the investment. Not to you. But I was worth every single sacrifice I made for myself." He flinched like I had physically struck him. The founder of the Harrington Foundation appeared at my elbow just then, extending his hand. "Ms. Carter, brilliant speech. The foundation is genuinely proud to have you." I shook his hand while my parents watched, silent. The founder of one of the most prestigious scholarships in the country, treating the daughter they'd once called worthless like she was something precious. I watched it hit them then, the full, undeniable weight of everything they had missed, everything they had thrown away without a second thought. After he moved on, I turned back to face them. They looked smaller somehow, diminished. "I'm not going to pretend everything is fine, because it isn't." "Emily, please," my mother whispered. "Can we just talk, as a family?" "We are talking." "I mean really talk. Come home for the summer. Let us—" "No." The word was firm, but not unkind. "I have a job in New York City. I start in 2 weeks. I won't be coming home." My father stepped forward. "You're just cutting us off, just like that?" "I'm setting boundaries," I said, keeping my voice steady. "There's a difference." "What do you want from us?" His voice actually cracked on the question. For the first time in my entire life, I saw my father look genuinely lost. "Tell me what you want, and I'll do it." I actually considered the question honestly for a long moment. "I don't want anything from you anymore. That's the whole point." I took a breath. "But if you ever want to talk, really talk, you can call me. I might answer, I might not. It depends entirely on whether you're calling to apologize or calling to make yourself feel better. My mother was crying again. We love you, Emily. We've always loved you. Maybe, I said quietly, but love isn't just words, it's choices, and you made yours. Sophia appeared at the edge of the circle, hovering uncertainly. Emily. She hesitated. Congratulations. Thank you. No hug, no tearful reconciliation, but no cruelty either. I'll call you sometime, I told her, if you want. She nodded, eyes wet. I'd like that. I turned and walked away, not running, not escaping, just moving forward, one deliberate step at a time. Dr. Reyes was waiting near the exit with a quiet smile. You did well, she said. I'm free, I replied, and for the very first time in my entire life, I actually meant it. The consequences started rippling outward before my parents had even left campus. At the reception, I watched it happen in real time, the slow realization spreading through their circle of family friends and acquaintances. A woman from their country club approached my mother directly. Diane, I didn't know Emily went to Ashford, a Harrington scholar. You must be so proud. My mother's smile looked like it physically hurt to hold. Yes, we're very proud. How on earth did you manage to keep it a secret this long? If my daughter had won something like that, I'd have it on a billboard. My mother had no answer for her. Over the following weeks, the questions kept multiplying. My father's business partners started asking about me. Saw your daughter's graduation speech online. Incredible story. You must have really pushed her to excel. He couldn't tell any of them the truth, that he had done the exact opposite. Sophia called me 3 days after graduation. Mom hasn't stopped crying. Dad barely talks. He just sits there. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you actually sorry? I thought about it honestly before answering. I don't want them to suffer, but I'm also not responsible for their feelings. Silence on the line for a long moment. Emily, I'm sorry. I should have asked. I should have paid attention. I was so wrapped up in my own stuff, and I know you knew that. I knew you had no reason to notice. Neither of us chose the way we were raised, but we can choose what happens next. More silence. Do you hate me? No, I said, and meant it. I don't have the energy to hate anyone. I just want to move forward. Can we maybe get coffee sometime? Start over? I thought about my sister, the girl who got everything and still, somehow, ended up empty-handed in a completely different way. Yeah, I said, I'd like that. If you've ever had to decide whether to give a family member a second chance after everything, I want to hear how you handled it. Comment below. This is one of the questions I get asked most often, and I think the answers help more people than you expect. 2 months after graduation, I stood in my new apartment in Manhattan, a studio, really, one window facing a brick wall, a kitchen roughly the size of a coat closet, but it was mine. I had signed the lease using money from my first paycheck at a top financial consulting firm, an entry-level position with brutal hours and an even steeper learning curve. I was genuinely never happier. Dr. Reyes called on a Saturday morning. How's the big city treating you? Exhausting, exciting, everything they warned me about. She laughed. That sounds about right. I'm proud of you, Emily. I hope you know that. I do. Thank you for everything. Maya visited the following weekend, walked into my studio, looked around, and declared it exactly as small and depressing as she'd expected, then hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. You actually did it, Em. You actually did it. One evening, I found a letter in my mailbox, handwritten, 3 pages, my mother's looping cursive filling every line.
Dear Emily, I don't expect you to forgive us. I'm honestly not sure I would if I were you. She wrote about regret, about the 1,000 small ways she felt she had failed me over the years, about watching me on that stage and realizing in that moment that she'd spent years looking at a stranger who also happened to be her daughter. I know I can't undo what happened, but I want you to know I see you now. I see who you've become, and I am so, so sorry that I didn't see you sooner." I read the letter twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it away in my desk drawer. I didn't reply, not because I was punishing her, but because I genuinely needed time to figure out what, if anything, I actually wanted to say back. For once in my life, that choice was entirely mine to make, on my own timeline. Okay, we're getting close to the end here, but I have to ask you this directly. If you were in my position, would you forgive your parents? Comment yes if you would, no if you wouldn't, or maybe if, like me, you'd need time to figure it out. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's genuinely the moment, because we've got so many more stories exactly like this one coming your way. I used to believe that love was something you had to earn, that if I was just smart enough, good enough, successful enough, my parents would eventually see me clearly, that their approval was some kind of prize waiting at the finish line of an invisible race I'd been running my whole life. 4 years of struggle taught me something completely different. You cannot make someone love you the right way. You cannot earn what should have been given to you freely from the very beginning. And you cannot spend your entire life waiting around for other people to finally notice your own worth. At some point, you have to notice it yourself. I look at my life now, my apartment, my job, the friends who genuinely chose me, and I realize something important. I built every piece of this myself, not out of anger, not out of spite, out of pure necessity. My parents' rejection didn't break me, it rebuilt me from the ground up. The girl who sat in that living room 4 years ago, desperate for her father's approval, she doesn't really exist anymore. In her place is a woman who knows exactly what she's worth, and who no longer needs anyone else's validation to confirm it. Some nights, I still think about them, about the family dinners I was never invited to, about the holiday photos with no trace of my face in them, about the $260,000 they spent on my sister while I ate ramen in a rented room with a broken heater. It still hurts sometimes. I don't think that particular kind of hurt ever fully disappears, but it doesn't control me the way it used to. I've learned something that took years to fully understand. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about releasing your own grip on the pain you've been carrying. I'm not fully there yet, but I'm working on it. And for the first time in my life, I'm working on it for myself, not to make anyone else comfortable, not to keep some fragile peace, just for me. 6 months after graduation, my phone rang. My father. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. "Hello, Emily." His voice sounded different, tired, worn down. "Thank you for picking up. I wasn't sure you would." Silence stretched between us. Then, "I deserve that." I waited. "I've been thinking every single day since graduation, trying to figure out what to actually say to you." He paused. "I keep coming empty." "Then just say what's true." Another long pause. "I was wrong, not just about the money, about everything. The way I treated you, the things I said, the years I didn't call, didn't ask, didn't..." His voice cracked. "I have no excuse. You were my father, and I failed you." I listened to him breathe on the other end of the line for a moment. "I hear you," I said finally. "That's all I've got right now." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. I thought maybe you'd tell me how to fix this." "It's not your job to tell me how to fix what you broke." More silence. "You're right," he said, sounding older than I had ever heard him sound in my entire life. "You're absolutely right." "But," I said, taking a breath, "if you want to try, I'm willing to let you." "You are?" "I'm not promising anything. No pretend family dinners, no acting like everything is fine, but if you want to have a real conversation, honest, no deflecting, I'll listen." "That's more than I deserve." "Yes," I said. It is. He laughed, a small, broken sound. You've always been the strong one, Emily. I was just too blind to see it. Yeah, I said. You were. We talked for a few more minutes after that. Nothing especially profound, just two people trying, awkwardly, to find some common ground across years of accumulated wreckage. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. It has been 2 years now since that graduation. I'm still in New York, still at the same firm, though I've been promoted twice since then. I'm starting my MBA at Columbia this fall, fully paid for by my company. The girl who once ate instant ramen and slept 4 hours a night would barely recognize me now, but I haven't forgotten her. I carry her with me every single day, because she's the reason I'm standing here at all. Sophia and I meet for coffee once a month now. It's awkward sometimes. We're essentially learning to be sisters as adults, which is strange because we were never really sisters as kids in any real sense. But she's trying, and I can genuinely see that now. I'm sorry I didn't see it, she told me at our last coffee date. All those years, I was so focused on what I was getting, I never once asked what you weren't. I know. How do you not hate me for that? Because you didn't create the system, you just benefited from it. My parents came to visit New York last month, their first time in the city. It was uncomfortable, stilted in places. My father spent half the visit apologizing. My mother spent the other half crying quietly at odd moments. But they came. They showed up at my door, in my city, in the life I built completely without them. That meant something, even if I couldn't fully name what. I'm not ready to call us a family again. That word carries too much history, too much weight. But we're something. We're working on something. Last month, I wrote a check to Camden State's Scholarship Fund, $10,000, anonymous, earmarked specifically for students without family financial support. Maya cried when I told her about it. Emily, you're literally changing someone's life. I told her someone changed mine, thinking about Dr. Reyes, about those brutal early coffee shop shifts at dawn, about the night I bookmarked a scholarship I never thought I'd actually win, about how far I've come, and about how much further I still want to go. If you're watching this and something in this story resonated with you, if you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or told you weren't good enough by the very people who were supposed to love you most, I want you to really hear this next part. They were wrong. They were always wrong. Your worth is not determined by who sees it. It's not a number on a check, or a seat at a table, or your place in a photograph. Your worth exists whether or not a single person on this entire planet ever chooses to acknowledge it. I spent 18 years of my life waiting for my parents to finally notice me. I spent 4 more years proving that I actually didn't need them to. And here's what I finally learned along the way. The approval I was chasing was never going to fill the hole inside me. Only I could do that. Some of you watching this are estranged from your own families right now. Some of you are still fighting for scraps of attention from people who should be giving you so much more freely. Some of you are just now starting to realize that the love you've been receiving isn't the love you actually deserve. Wherever you are in that particular journey tonight, I want you to know this. It's okay to protect yourself. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to decide that you matter more than keeping some fragile piece. And it's okay to forgive, but only when you're genuinely ready and not one moment before. You don't need your parents, your siblings, or anyone else on this earth to confirm what you already know deep down. You are enough. You always have been. Take a look in the mirror tonight and say it out loud. I am enough. That's the first step. Everything after that is up to you. But I believe you can take it.
Because if a girl who was once told she wasn't worth the investment can end up standing on a graduation stage in front of 3,000 people as a Harrington Scholar, you can do absolutely anything you set your mind to. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this one. If this story meant something to you tonight, please share it with someone who might need to hear it, and drop a comment letting me know which part hit you the hardest. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next story, because trust me, we've got so many more waiting for you, and I genuinely cannot wait to sit down and tell you the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next story.